Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'll be sharing with you how to make this beautiful ruched dress using a non-stretch African print. I have split this tutorial into two. This will be the pattern drafting and the next will be the sewing part. So if this is something you love to learn, definitely keep on watching. For this tutorial, you'll need a basic bodice block, a basic skirt block, and a basic sleeve block. This dress has a joining on the waistline and I've gone ahead and traced them out. My normal half length is 17 inches, so for the bodice, I extended it by 1 inch, making it 18 inches. Then the length of the skirt is 20 inches. The half inch is the seam allowance on the waistline. So this completes the length of the gown. On the back skirt block, I modified it a little bit to define my butt, so at the hem of the center back skirt, I went in by half an inch and I connected it back into the hip line. I replaced this half inch I took from the center back to the side seam and connected it back into the hip line. The circumference of the hem of my gown is 36 inches. I minused 4 inches from my hip measurement. So you measure the circumference of the hem of your gown, how tight or loose you want it to be, and plot on your pattern accordingly. I will cancel out the old center back line, draw in my 1 inch seam allowance following the new line. Then I will trim off the seam allowance at the hem of the skirt, the side seam, and on the waistline for the next step. According to the picture we are working with, the ruching of this gown runs in the center front, the center back, and both sides of the gown. But if you prefer a ruching as shown in the picture, here is what to do. Mark half of your bust span measurement starting from where your dart stopped to the hem of the skirt. Connect these points, then cut open this line, trim off the darts, and retrace on a fresh paper and add your seam allowance. We are not doing this for this tutorial, just want to put it out there for someone who might need it. For this tutorial, we'll be creating our ruching using the slash and spread method. I'll go ahead and slash this pattern for the front and the back. There's no particular method to doing this. You just draw your lines as your spirit leads and go ahead and slash them open. I have drawn the lines on my pattern for the front and the back, making sure I have the same number of lines for the front and the back. And here I have 7 pieces of these and I'll go ahead and slash them open. On a fresh paper, I'll go ahead and spread these pieces at 2 inches. So I have drawn my center front line and I'll go ahead and align these pieces on this line and spread each at 2 inches. So depending on how full or scanty you want your ruching to be, just go ahead and spread it according to your taste. Once that is done, I'll connect the lines and add my seam allowances and cut it out. So this is what the front skirt block is looking like. There's a joining at the center front skirt. This will enable me secure the ruching without it ripping apart. So I'll go ahead and do the same for the back skirt block but off camera. This is the back skirt block. I've already slashed and spread it, but I wanted to bring this to your attention before I trim off the excess. Because of the slight curve from the hip to the hem as a result of the half inch we went in at the hem of the skirt, I used this calibrated ruler to align the lines while spreading the pieces. I placed the ruler on the 2 inches space, making sure the line on the ruler is parallel to the edge of the paper. Then I followed the line on the ruler to place the next piece, just like I'm showing you. And I did this for all the pieces. Like this, I was able to get them all aligned properly. Because I'm using an African print, I didn't bother taking out the dart because the dart won't really show when I finish sewing. But for someone who is using a plain material and will not want to see any dart line, here is how to remove the darts. You can do this before you slash and spread your pattern by closing the darts before you draw in the lines for the slash and spread, or you can do this after the pattern has been modified. If you're doing it after the pattern has been modified, go ahead and redraw the dart legs. This time it's going to be longer, and pin it close or hold it close with a tape. Place your pattern on your fabric and make sure you follow every corner of your pattern while pinning on your fabric. You must follow every corner just like I am doing in the video. Your pattern is not going to turn out flat. It's going to be slightly curved if you do it well. If it's not slightly curved, just know you didn't do it well. So make sure your fabric fill in every space on the pattern using your hands while you pin, especially around the hip area. This is what your pattern will look like, slightly curved if you do it correctly. So I have notched the dart point on the one without dart and the seam allowance on the center front, because this other one does not have seam allowance on the center front. Is a complete skirt, so I'll be pairing these two to show you it's the same thing. I will match the two fabrics at the dart point. As you can see, the two pattern is exactly the same thing. The one with dart and the one without dart is exactly the same thing. Whichever way you choose to do it, you come up with the same result. So for our tutorial, we are doing with dart because we are using an African print, so you can hardly see the dart line. Here is the front and the back skirt of our gown modified, and we'll move over to modifying the bodice. According to our picture, the gown has some gathers on the waistline, so I'll slash open the waist dart, close the bust dart, and I'll use the slash and spread method to add these gathers. Because I'm using an African print for this style, which is not a flowy material like chiffon, crepe or satin like we have in the picture, I will not be adding much gathers on the waistline. So on the shoulder, I'm marking points to draw in the lines for the slash and spread. You can draw in as many lines as you want depending on how much you want to gather on the waistline. On a fresh pattern paper, I will spread each piece at 1 inch, reconnect the lines, draw in my seam allowance and cut out the new pattern. So this is what our front pattern looked like. I'll go ahead and do the same for the back pattern. For the back pattern, it's practically the same thing I did on the front. I slashed it into 3 pieces, went ahead to spread each piece at 1 inch and then add my seam allowance and zip allowance and then cut the pattern out. So this is what we have for the front and the back pattern, but at this point I noticed that the back pattern was quite smaller than the front, so I measured the front and we have around 13 inches 0.25 or thereabout, while on the back we have 11 inches, and this is as a result of the bust dart that I rotated into the waistline. So I went in and slashed and spread more on the back pattern to make up for the shortage. So this is what our pattern is looking like. I slashed on the shoulder and I also slashed under the armhole. I'll go ahead and measure the two waistlines just to reconfirm that everything is accurate. And here is for the front. Sorry I didn't get that on camera. And here is for the back, 13.25. And one last verification. And voila, we are good to go. The total sleeve length is 25 inches, 20 inches for the body of the sleeve, 5 inches for the band, and my cap height is 4 inches. My upper arm round sleeve is 14 inches, half of that is 7. The lower arm where I will attach the band is 9 inches, half of that is 4.5. Sorry I didn't show that on camera. If you already have a basic sleeve block, you can skip this step and move to the slashing and spreading part. I'll go ahead and measure the armhole circumference of the front and back bodies and plot this on our pattern paper. On the back bodies, I have 9 inches, while on the front I have 8.5 inches. So with these numbers, I will go in and draw in my cap sleeve curves till the curves corresponds with the numbers. This is how I do my sleeves and it works perfectly for me, and as you can see, I have cottoned the front armhole. This is not a professional way of doing sleeve. There are lots of tutorials on YouTube on sleeves, you can look that up. And for the back armhole, I'll find the middle of the front armhole, go up by half an inch, and I'll connect the points. On my back sleeve, I have 8.75 as against the 9 inch, which is totally okay. The remaining 0.25 inch I will add on the side seam. For this sleeve, we'll be slashing to add volume to the hem of the body of the sleeve, and I'll be spreading each piece at 2 inches. So there's no particular rules to doing this, just go ahead and slash and spread as much as you want, depending on how full or scanty you want your sleeve to turn out. So I've gone ahead and cut and spread my pieces at 2 inches, add my seam allowance and cut it out. And this is what my pattern is looking like. But at this stage, I decided to add some peps to the sleeve so that it will puff when I add the band. So I extended the body of the sleeve by extra 3 inches, making it 23 inches in total for the body of the sleeve without the band. So that when I add the band to the sleeve, it's going to have that balloon effect, if you get what I mean. For the neck collar, I already have a tutorial on my channel on how to craft a perfect turtleneck collar. This is the picture of the thumbnail on that tutorial. The link to that video will be in the description. So here are all the patterns we'll be working with to create this dress. I hope you can see everything because my table is really small. I have here the sleeve and the band. The band is just a square with half of your round sleeve measurement plus seam allowance. I have the skirt for the front and the back. I have the front and back bodies, the neck collar, but this collar is looking small. I think I will increase the height of the collar. And if you like to see how this pattern turn out, make sure to hit the subscribe button, turn on your notifications so that you get notified when I upload the sewing part. Thank you for watching, and until my next one, a bientôt.